Loan activities of banks. Let us take the story of banks further. What do the banks do with the deposits which they accept from the public? There is an interesting mechanism at work here. Banks keep only a small proportion of their deposits as cash with themselves. For example, banks in India these days hold about 15% of their deposits as cash. This is kept as provision to pay the depositors who might come to withdraw money from the bank on any given day. Since on any particular day, only some of its many depositors come to withdraw cash, the bank is able to manage with this cash. Bank use the major portion of the deposits to extend loans. There is a huge demand for loans for various economic activities. We shall read more about this in the following sections. Banks make use of the deposits to meet the loan requirements of the people. In this way, banks mediate between those who have surplus funds and those who are in need of these funds. Banks charge a higher interest rate on loans than what they offer on deposits. The difference between what is charged from borrowers and what is paid to depositors is their main source of income. So we can say that bank work as mediator between the depositors and the borrowers. People deposit their money in bank and get some rate of interest as extra income. Banks hold only some percentage of their deposits in bank. A major portion of the deposited money is provided to those people who are needy of money for economic activities. In this case, money is provided as a loan with a higher rate of interest. The difference between interest on borrowing money and the interest of deposited money is the main source of income for the bank. Here we can see that picture that bank act as a mediator between the people who have surplus money and people who need money. Now, the two different credit situation. A large number of transactions in our day-to-day activities involve credit in some form or the other. Credit refers to an agreement in which the lender supplies the borrower with money, goods or services in return for the promise of future payment. Let us see how credit works through the following two examples. Number one, festival season. It is festival season 2 months from now, and the shoe manufacturer Salim has received an order from a large trader in town for 3,000 pairs of shoes to be delivered in a month's time. To complete production on time, Salim has to hire a few more workers for stitching and pasting work. He has to purchase the raw materials. To meet these expenses, Salim obtains loan from two sources. First, he asks the leather supplier to supply leather now and promises to pay him later. Second, he obtains loan in cash from the large trader as advance payment for 1,000 pairs of shoes with a promise to deliver the whole order by the end of the month. At the end of the month, Salim is able to deliver the order, make a good profit, and repay the money that he had borrowed. In this case, Salim obtains credit to meet the working capital needs of production. The credit helps him to meet the ongoing expenses of production, complete production on time, and thereby increase his earnings. Credit therefore plays a vital and positive role in this situation. Another is Swapna's problem. Swapna, a small farmer, grows groundnut on her 3 acres of land. She takes a loan from the moneylender to meet the expenses of cultivation, hoping that her harvest would help repay the loan. Midway through the season, the crop is hit by pest and the crop fails. Though Swapna sprays her crops with expensive pesticides, it makes little difference. She is unable to repay the moneylender and the debt grows over the year into a large amount. Next year, Swapna takes a fresh loan for cultivation. It is a normal crop this year, but the earnings are not enough to cover the old loan. She is caught in debt. She has to sell a part of the land to pay off the debt. In this case, when Swapna obtains credit from moneylender, she could not increase her production in sufficient quantity. The interest rate is also high. she could not repay the loan and amount of debt goes on increasing. So she has to forego a part of her land in order to pay the debt. Here the credit plays a negative role and lowers down the financial position of Swapna. From these two examples, we learned that credit may be helpful or harmful depending upon the situation. In rural areas, the main demand for credit is for crop production. Crop production involves considerable costs of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, water, electricity, repair of equipment, etc. There is a minimum stretch of 3 to 4 months between the time when the farmers buy these inputs and when they sell the crop. Farmers usually take crop loans at the beginning of the season and repay the loan after harvest. Repayment of the loan is crucially dependent on the income from farming. In Swapna's case, the failure of the crop made loan repayment impossible. She had to sell part of the land to repay the loan. Credit, instead of helping Swapna improve her earnings, left her worse off. This is an example of what is commonly called debt trap. Credit in this situation, Credit in this case pushes the borrower into a situation from which recovery is very painful. In one situation, credit helps to increase earnings and therefore the person is better off than before. In another situation, because of the crop failure, credit pushes the person into a debt trap. To repay her loans, she has to sell a portion of her land. She is clearly much worse off than before. Whether credit would be useful or not, therefore, depends on the risks in the situation and whether there is some support in case of loss. So we are having the two situations of credit. Now another term, that is terms of credit. Every loan agreement specifies an interest rate which the borrower must pay to the lender along with the repayment of the principal. In addition, lenders may demand collateral against loans. Collateral is an asset that the borrowers owns, such as land, building, vehicle, livestock, deposits with banks, and uses this as a guarantee to a lender until the loan is repaid. If the borrower fails to repay the loan, the lender has the right to sell the asset or collateral to obtain payment. Properties such as land titles, deposits with banks, livestock are some common examples of collateral used for borrowing. So the interest rate, collateral, and some document fulfill the requirements of the terms of credit. Interest rate is specified when a lender provides loan to the borrowers. A borrower will have to repay the amount taken from the lenders with the amount of interest. In some case, lenders may demand collateral against loans. So collateral is an asset of the borrowers which is given to the lenders as security for the specified period. A lender can use the asset which are held by him as security until the amount of loan is repaid. The lender has right to sell the assets or collateral when the borrower fails to repay the amount of loan in a specified period. Interest rate, collateral, and documentation requirement and the mode of repayment together comprise what is called the terms of credit. The terms of credit vary substantially from one credit arrangement to another. They may vary depending on the nature of the lender and the borrower. The next section will provide examples of the varying items of credit in different credit arrangements. Formal sector credit in India. We have seen in the above examples that people obtain loans from various sources. The various types of loans can be conventionally grouped as formal sector loans and informal sector loans. Among the former are loans from banks and cooperatives. The informal lender include money lenders, traders, employer, relatives, and friends, etc. Formal sector. In the formal sector, loans from banks and cooperatives are included. Informal sector. In the informal sector, loans from money lenders, traders, employers, relatives, and friends are included. As we know that major portion of the deposited money is provided to those people who are needy of money for economic activities. In India, Reserve Bank of India is supervise the functioning of loan activities in formal sectors. In India, the rate of interest in informal sector is greater than the rate of interest in formal sector. Rate of interest in formal sector is supervised by the legal authorities. In the informal sector, the rate of interest is supervised by moneylenders, traders, employers who are provided money. The rate of interest is varying from person to person. There is no organization for supervising loan in informal sector. Lenders can use any method to get back their money from the borrowers. Sometimes the incomes of the borrowers become less compared than the amount which has to pay due to the high rate of interest. The Reserve Bank of India supervises the functioning of formal sources of loans. For instance, we have seen that the banks maintain a minimum cash balance out of the deposit they receive. The RBI monitors the banks in actually maintaining cash balance. Similarly, the RBI sees that the banks give loans not just to profit making businesses and traders but also to small cultivators, small scale industries, to small borrowers, etc. Periodically, banks have to submit information to the RBI on how much they are lending to whom at what interest rate, etc. On the other hand, there is no organization which supervises the credit activities of lenders in the informal sector. They can lend at whatever interest rate they choose. There is no one to stop them from using unfair means to get their money back. Compared to the formal lenders, most of the informal lenders charge a much higher interest on loans. Thus, the cost of the borrower of informal loans is much higher. Higher cost of borrowing means a large part of the earnings of the borrowers is used to repay the loan. Hence, borrowers have less income left for themselves. In certain cases, the high interest rate for borrowing can mean that the amount to be repaid is greater than the income of the borrower. This could lead to increasing debt and debt trap. Also, people who might wish to start an enterprise by borrowing may not do so because of the high cost of borrowing. For these reasons, banks and cooperative societies need to lend more. This would lead to higher incomes and many people could then borrow cheaply for a variety of needs. They could grow crops, do businesses, set up small scale industries, etc. They could set up new industries or trade in goods. Cheap and affordable credit is crucial for the development of any country. Now, formal and informal credit. Who gets what? Graph 2 shows the importance of formal and informal sources of credit for people in urban areas. The people are divided into four groups from poor to rich as shown in the figure. You can see that 85% of the loans taken by poor households in the urban areas are from informal sources. Compare this with the rich urban households. What do you find? Only 10% of their loans are from informal sources, while 90% are from formal sources. A similar pattern is also found in rural areas. The rich households are availing cheap credit from formal lenders, whereas the poor households uh, have to pay a large amount for borrowing. What does all this suggest? First, the formal sector still meets only about half of the total credit needs of the rural people. The remaining credit needs are met from informal sources. Most loans from informal lenders carry a very high interest rate and do little to increase the income of the borrowers. Thus, it is necessary that banks and cooperatives increase their lending, particularly in the rural areas, so that the dependence on informal sources of credit reduces. Secondly, while formal sector loans need to expand, it is also necessary that everyone receive these loans. At present, it is the richer households who receive formal credit, whereas the poor have to depend on the informal sources. It is important that the formal credit is distributed more equally so that the poor can benefit from the cheaper loans. Now the question arises, what is the differences between the formal sector of credit and informal sector of credit? So we can distinguish on following basis. Number one, Formal sources of credit are registered by the government and have to follow its rules and regulations. On the other hand, informal sources, these include those small and scattered units which are largely outside the control of the government. Number 2, RBI supervises the functioning of formal sources of credit. On the other hand, there is no organization which supervises the credit activities in informal sources. Number 3, formal sources of credit generally charge lower rates of interest, while informal sources of credit charge much higher rates of interest. Another is informal sources. Informal sources of credit, the main motive is profit making, while formal sources of credit, their main motive is social welfare. Example of formal credit sources is banks and cooperatives. Example of informal sources of credit is money lenders, traders, relatives, etc. Self-help groups for the poor, SHGS. In the previous section, we have seen that poor households are still dependent on informal sources of credit. Why is it so? Because banks are not present everywhere in rural India. Even when they are present, getting a loan from a bank is much more difficult than taking a loan from informal sources. As we saw, for Mega, bank loans require proper documents and collateral. Absence of collateral is one of the major reasons which prevents the poor from getting bank loans. Informal lenders, such as money lenders, on the other hand, know the borrowers personally and hence are often willing to give a loan without collateral. The borrowers can, if necessary, approach the money lenders even without repaying their earlier loans. However, the money lenders charge very high rates of interest, keep no records of the transactions, and harass the poor borrowers. In recent years, people have tried out some newer ways of providing loans to the poor. The idea is to organize rural poor, in particular women, into a small self-help groups and pool their savings. So that is self-help groups. Self-help groups for the poor. It facilitates of banks are not available in all rural areas, so the poor are dependent on informal sector for borrowing loan. The poor have to pay a high rate of interest to the money lenders. It is difficult to borrow loan from the bank because of the absence of the collateral and documents. And documents and collateral are required for a bank loan. Informal lenders like money lenders are often willing to give a loan without collateral because they personally knew the borrowers. An organization constituted to collect the savings of the poor, which is known as self-help group. The aim of the organization is to lend loan at less rate of interest compared to the rate of interest specified by the money lenders. A self-help group has 15 to 20 members. Most of them are women. Savings vary from member to member, that is rupees 25 to rupees 100, depending on the ability of the person to save. The organization also provides self employment opportunity for the member by the way of sanctioning the group. For example, small loans are provided to the members for releasing mortgaged land, for meeting working capital needs, for housing materials, for acquiring assets. There is also a group for repayment of loan. In case of any non-repayment by the one member is followed by the other member of the organization. So this is a self-help groups. Thus, the self-help groups help borrowers overcome the problem of lack of collateral. They can get timely loans for a variety of purposes and at a reasonable interest rate. Moreover, self-help groups are the building blocks of organization of the rural poor. Not only does it help women to become financially self-reliant, the regular meetings of the group provide a platform to discuss and act on a variety of social issues such as health, nutrition, domestic violence, etc. That's all for today, student. Thank you.